Good to see you guys. It's awesome to talk about baseball in December. I think that's one of the cool things that makes LSU is the interest that we have, and just giving a little bit of a recap of the fall and kind of where we're at. Thought it was very productive. I thought the players did a great job being coachable and buying into the new process of doing things or new way of doing things. I've always kind of looked at the year as like a 9 inning year, where the first inning is summer ball, and we kind of came in midstream in that. Second inning would be like September, and getting a good foundation with weight training, individual work, all of those types of things. Third inning, fall practice, and I thought we did a good job of measuring a few things to give us a little better idea of what we have and where our team's at, and some good foundations to build on going into the season. And that kind of leads us to right now, where we're hands off with the players for really the next 40 days or so. And it's really critically important that they do a good job of taking ownership of their development. We laid out a good plan for each of them, very explicitly of what we want to see them do to be ready when we turn a corner, so we can maximize our prep for the season. And we're really excited to get to that point.
Coach, how healthy is this team? Because you didn't see Jacob Berry a lot. Dylan was on and off in terms of scrimmages and stuff like that. How healthy is this team right now?
Yeah, I think not as much as we'd all like it to be, and I think that's okay. I don't think there's anything where you look at and point of, hey, maybe we're not going to have this guy. There's still some issues with a couple guys where we're not quite sure where they're going to land at the beginning of the season, and a couple of those things we have to work through. So I think by the time the bell rings, we'll be in a much better position than we are today. And, I think I'm not overly concerned about that at this point.
Hey, Coach. Steve Schneider from WAFB. Glad to finally see you and
Good to see you.
Catch up on everything. Have you ever faced the challenge of having so many guys at your disposal, figuring out where they're going to fit, how they're going to fit into the future? I think I counted maybe like 48 guys that are here now, 20 great recruits coming in. Like, is there something similar that you've experienced in the past where you've had to figure out what the path is for that many guys?
Yeah, I think the COVID situation obviously changed a lot of things in college baseball and an unlimited roster last year. And I think what I've always wanted to do is just be honest and fair. And so coming in, we wanted to give almost all the guys a chance to show what they were and make sure that we had a good look at what was at our disposal. And so we went through a fall where we have more players than you typically do, and have gotten to a good place where I feel like we have a much better understanding of those players and how they fit and how they'll work into our team dynamic this year and moving forward. And we're going to learn a lot more about that as the year goes along. I mean, there's a lot of guys that haven't played a college baseball game, haven't played at LSU, that we're going to learn more about as the season goes along. And then moving forward, I think that's the way that it is. It's one of the best programs in the country. A lot of players want to come here. There's going to be elite competition, and that's exciting. And I'd way rather have it that way, where there's a lot of competition, than not having what you need. And we're never going to put ourselves in that position.
But it is new.
Oh, for sure. Last year, my team last year is easily the bigger than this one, biggest roster that I ever had. And it presents some different challenges. And when you come into it in a first year like this year, we really, really wanted to come in with an open mind. We obviously knew some of the players that had some success last year and that they probably are going to have a chance to do some things that are positive that helps our team. But we didn't want to shut an eye to maybe somebody that was new. And there's some of those guys that popped up, and that's exciting.
Cutting is the wrong word, but do you anticipate having to place or helping other kids find other places to go that aren't going to be able to make this team come roster time, come February?
We're set where we need to be, with the roster right now, and really trying to put all of them in the best position to be successful, on our team, or guys that were here. And we're very comfortable where we're at, and I'll help anybody, that invests time into our program. But we're in a good spot now.
My other question was, you can look at the stats and say, oh, this guy had a great fall or this guy struggled, those kind of things. Who were you most impressed by hitters-wise that just was like, okay, that's a solid fall?
Yeah, I think there's a couple guys that kind of stand out. I think Cade Doty is, in my opinion, one of the best players in the country, and it just doesn't seem like people talk about him as much as maybe some other guys that are here. And we have some metric stuff that we use to say who is the most productive in terms of helping you win, and he scored number one over anybody on our team in that. I thought Cade Beloso had a terrific fall. We made some pretty wholesale changes, if you will, in terms of his swing, his approach, and what he was doing, and they paid immediate dividends. And so I think those two guys kind of stand out. We're excited about Tyler McManus, bringing him in as a transfer. He had a really good fall. And it doesn't stop there. There's a lot to be sorted out. I mean, we're not nearly at a point where, hey, this is the lineup, or these are the guys that are going to start and be in the rotation. It'd be unfair or a disservice to our team to make those calls right now. And I think there's an immense amount of competition, and that's a really good thing because a lot of guys did have some good performances throughout the fall.
Coach Tommy Kreisland, you probably inherited all, if not most, of the schedule for 2022. But going forward, what is your philosophy on pre-conference games and home? Take that one road trip, whatever it may be. Your approach to scheduling.
Yeah, I think for me is there's one thing that is the most important. That's developing an RPI to put your team in the best position for the postseason, whether that be hosts, be a national seed, get into the NCAA tournament, which is a lot harder than people think that it is at times. So that's always number one. What's in our best interest to develop the best RPI possible? I think we're going to have a tremendous home field advantage here. Can't wait to see what that looks like with a full stadium. So we obviously want to play home games. And then there's an element where you want to test your team against really good teams, maybe close to the caliber of SEC teams before you play an SEC weekend. So try to blend all of that together of being at home, developing the right RPI, and then making sure we're prepared when we turn the corner to play, some of the better programs in the country.
A lot of fans are wondering about the bullpen, and I'm just wondering who stood out to you in this fall ball, and yeah.
Yeah, I think the strength of our pitching staff is going to be in the numbers in terms of the amount of guys that I think can make a positive contribution throughout the game and throughout a weekend or throughout a season. And I've always been one to not maybe do it by the book, but do it in a way that sets the pitcher up for success. I think Coach Kelly did a terrific job with those guys, and I think it's a good thing, or sometimes you might think it's a bad thing to maybe not pinpoint, one or two guys that say, hey, this guy is going to finish games on the mound. I think we have a few guys that are going to have the capability of doing that. We have a few guys that are going to be able to match up well. We have, a good handful of guys that I think can start and get us through the lineup a couple times. So I'm excited to see how those piece together. And I think it's probably a little premature to say, hey, this guy's going to be on the back end of the game, or we're up 2 in the ninth. This is who you're going to see roll out. I think we're going to play probably 12 times or 12 scrimmages leading into the season from the first day of practice. So those will be critical in seeing where we're at. And the other part, as I mentioned, this time is so critical in terms of what players do to get themselves ready for the season that we may not have the exact same player coming out of fall baseball that we do on February 18th. That could be good or be bad. And so I think there's some strong character within the team. I think the work ethic is good. So I'm optimistic about where they'll be, but I've always been cautious about, having into the fall meetings and saying, hey, you're this. I don't think you're accounting for the changes, both positively and negatively that young players will make between now and when we start.
Coach, in the past decade, analytics went from being something nobody knew anything about, and now it's every hour of the day. How do you and your staff treat that with the players, and how much do the players pay attention to it, or do they rely on the staff to say, what you're doing tells me we can do this?
I think you have to know your player, and I think those are all positive. Anything you can use to drive home a point for development or a point for preparation, you can use that to your advantage. But I think what I've always believed is simplifying the task for the player is the most important thing. And so what we use it for is to take what we want them to do, and if it's another way of showing them the effectiveness of what we're trying to get them to do, and it drives the point home more to motivate them towards that, then that's a real positive. And then on the scouting and the preparation side, I mean, everything's at every coach's disposal in the entire country to be able to use, with the technology out there and all of those types of things. And the key is how you use it and to use it effectively. And we have a staff that I think is really, really advanced in being able to do that. Yes, and that's coaching. Yeah, that's coaching. That's like, it's our job to be able to understand who can handle what, who can't handle what, and then delivering a message in the way that moves the player to get them to do what we want them to do.
When you sit down with Coach Kelly, I mean, you've talked about it before with Devin possibly being able to compete for a starting spot. What do you know about the kids that that are going to compete for spots in the starting rotation that you did? What do you know now that you didn't know? And who do you I'm not asking for Friday, Saturday, Sunday starters, but who's in that running to just be able to compete for a starting spot?
Yeah, I think for me, who can get through the lineup 2 or 3 times? I mean, and that means you have to get right-handed, left-handed hitters out. That all starts with the foundation of strikes. And I think, and I've said this a couple times, the best thing about our pitching staff that I saw this fall is they were in the strike zone. And so it gives you a starting point with that. If you can't check that box, you're out of the mix. And we have some guys that can check that box. I mean, you mentioned Devin. I think, he's very motivated to maybe take that next step in his development and in his career, and certainly had a really good fall. I think we didn't extend him past 3. I think he might have gone 4 one time. Held his stuff. The 4th inning was the same as the first inning. Development of his secondary stuff went to another level, and just the strikes. On the left-handed side, I thought Javen Coleman threw the ball really good. Riley Cooper threw the ball really good. I think those guys, have the capability to potentially do that. Mikhail Hilliard is battle-tested. Throws all his pitches for strikes, has some good deception. Those are just kind of a couple names. Ty Floyd had a really good fall, pitched well in the 2 outside scrimmages that we had, and extended to 3 innings and did it effectively, both times. And I don't want to leave anybody out because I think there's more guys that are going to be in that mix. And kind of the process is going to be is to build enough guys' pitch counts up when we get back to competing that they will sort that out, and we'll basically and have given them the check marks of this is what it's going to take to do that, and then who moves their development closest to that kind of sorts itself out after that.
See something of multiple different starters pre-conference wise trying to figure something out for SEC wise?
Yeah, I mean it's game 1, and I've always kind of been all hands are on deck, and then when game 1's over, then we kind of figure out game 2. So that's probably a certainty, of it's going to go that way.
I wanted to ask about Cale Lansville. I saw him, I think he threw like 9 strikes and 10 pitches in one of the scrimmages, and just wanted to see, like, where's his development at? How have you seen him grow? He's, I guess, a freshman. And then also with Blake Money, I wanted to ask about him since he sat out last season when they went into the postseason, and it sounds like he's done a lot of work and losing weight and stuff to develop his game.
Yeah, 2 good names, that I didn't just mention, but that doesn't preclude them from what we were just talking about or the question that was previously asked. I think in terms of Cale, a couple things stand out. He seems kind of almost like an old soul, incoming freshman, but has a lot of professionalism in terms of what he does. He's in the training room all the time. He's in the weight room all the time. High level of preparation, very advanced. He's not looking around wondering what he should be doing. He's very committed and convicted to the things that he does to get himself ready to pitch. And so I think that stands out. The other thing is, he throws a lot of strikes. He has some pitchability, throwing multiple pitches for strikes. So I think that's really positive. And then you mentioned Blake. When it was September and before we'd started team practice, if we were up here, doing some individual work with the hitters, he'd be rolling through on his own all the time and was in the weight room. And if you turn on the video from last year and look at his body, and then you look at him today, you would think it's two completely different people. And I think that improved fitness level, if you would call it, has made him a better athlete, which is helping him repeat his delivery, which is leading to more strikes, more command of off speed, and had a really good fall as well. That was a nice incremental improvement and change, and he's going to get a chance to make a positive contribution as well.
Building on what Leah just talked about, LSU fans have seen a ton of young arms come in, throw 94, 95, and then all of a sudden something pops, and then they're gone. Jaden Hill is a great example. Talking about, is it just fitness? Is it a little bit of luck? How do you try to combat, don't overdo it, injury-wise with the pitching staff?
I think you have to have a plan. You have to know what you're doing. I think, throwing a baseball is one of the most violent things that the body can do athletically. And sometimes guys are going to get hurt, and there's no explanation for it. So there's no bulletproof system. But at the same time, you have to put things in place to give yourself the best chance to stay healthy and get stronger. And when you look at kind of who's going to pitch and who's going to continue to succeed throughout the season, it comes down to strikes, ability to get outs, and stay healthy or stay strong so you can repeat your performance over the course of a season. And so I give Coach Kelly a lot of credit. When I hired him, literally the first thing I told him to do was to call a meeting with the strength coach, the trainer, and put together, how are we going to do this? We need to be healthier with this pitching staff than maybe previous, LSU staffs have done it. So getting those guys all on the same page and then presenting the plan to the pitchers and then have them really consistently execute that plan led us to really good health, throughout the fall with the pitching staff, and we plan on that continuing.
Personal question. Are you finally fitting in, and is Baton Rouge, like, you're learning things about Baton Rouge, you're learning things about LSU, just went through your first football coaching hire, just you starting to feel like you're here?
Yes. For me, the second you have the first team meeting, then it becomes about kind of what we're doing with our program. And in that case, it's normal. It's very normal. I would say, in coming to Louisiana, the people have all been really welcoming. So I don't think as much of me doing anything other than, the people here make you feel like you fit in really quickly. And so I've been very thankful for that, whether it's been, LSU baseball alums, people around town when you're out eating dinner and then, saying welcome to Baton Rouge and we're so happy you're here. Like, that's pretty cool. And I've heard this was an awesome place, and what made it awesome was the people and the support they have for LSU, and it's easily lived up to that. No, yeah, maybe my head's been in the sand of what we need to do, but yeah, it's. I came here with the expectation that this was kind of a once in a, or one spot in the country type place, relative to college baseball, and for me, that's what I've seen.
You obviously talk a lot about getting each player better, and you mentioned Beloso and some of the other guys who've made some really visible strides and stuff. Is there any, like, when there's nobody in the stadium, there's nobody around, whether it's a baseball IQ or an effort type of thing, maybe some guys that have made those incremental steps that might totally change the player that they are?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. One thing we talked about in the first meeting is the NCAA limits us with the hours that we can be with them, and having what I call a lights-on culture, and that they're working on their own, and not just working on their own, but working properly, or what we would call deliberate practice. And I've absolutely seen that. Yesterday at 1 o'clock, we're off. Guys have the machine set up on the field, taking batting practice and doing their thing. Trey Morgan, last night texted me to make sure the lights were on the field to come out here and work on his own. And so I've been really, really pleased with that. I don't think you can have a winning program in any sport if you don't have self-motivated people. I think in development, getting them to take ownership of their improvement, and so they have a big stake in it, and then we guide them as far as the things to do. That's when it really pops for guys, and I think you'll see some different players, than were here a year ago, and that's exciting.
I think the players have talked a lot about Coach Kelly, especially from the pitching staff, and I just wanted to know, what makes him so dynamic as a pitching coach, and what does he bring to the staff in general?
Yeah, I think and I've said this before, I think he's really complete. I think, going through my coaching hires, recruiting's obviously on your brain, and that's something people want to talk about all the time. He's very good at that. I've been in a lot of recruiting battles against him for my entire career, and young players really gravitate towards him. So I think that's the first box you check. But, we needed to improve on the mound, plain and simple. And kind of my thought process was, as I was deciding who to hire, I was trying to picture myself standing in the dugout, and it's 3-3 in the sixth inning against Arkansas. Who do I trust to have done the work on the preparation side of it, to be prepared to call a good game that's going to help the pitcher be successful, who can walk out to the mound and have great poise, great communication skills, look the pitcher in the eye, and then get him focused on what he needs to do. And, as I started thinking of it that way, he was an easy choice. And I think more than anything I could say about him, ask the pitchers. And they're completely bought into what his plan is, of what he wants them to execute, what's going to help us be better as a team. So, and then the development side, he's really good at taking a guy from here and getting him to where you want to go. So if you talk about ability to execute, in the game as a pitching coach, ability to execute in practice and facilitate development, starts with him being a great person and a good relationship guy. So checks a lot of boxes, as our entire staff does.
Talking about recruiting, I don't know how much you're allowed to do this NCAA-wise, but when you talk to recruits who commit, they're always like, oh, I grew up watching Bregman. I grew up watching Austin Nola. I grew up watching Aaron Nola. How much does LSU's history just help with that? And are you able to use former players like that in terms of recruiting-wise? Because every player that I've talked to is always like, yeah, Bregman was my favorite player. Nola was my favorite player. How much does that make you and Coach Fitzgerald's job just that much easier?
I think this is a standout place when you talk about alums and real top-end 1% Major League Baseball players. You mentioned Aaron Nola. You mentioned Alex Bregman. Texted with DJ LeMahieu last night, for the first time. For me, that's the guy. That's, if you want to blueprint a hitter in college after, it's DJ LeMahieu. So I don't know that very many programs have the history of or current successful major league all-star type player. Kevin Gausman just signed a $110 million contract. That's pretty awesome, So I think you can create a clear vision of what's possible for the player, because let's not kid ourselves. Anybody that's coming into our program, they want to be a major league player, and that's how it has to be. And that's how we're going to design our development path, is to obviously to help us win games, but in the process, we want to be sending players out of here as high draft picks, and more importantly, really prepared for professional baseball. And those guys are examples of highly talented guys that have taken care of everything in their life the right way, and now they're the top of the top. So it's incredibly helpful.
What's been the reception with older players and alums? Because they coach them. What's been the kind of reception and relationship you've been able to build with the former players?
It's unbelievable. I went to a dinner last night with several of them, and sometimes I'm kind of like looking around, going like, man, this is something else. These are, and it's not just those guys that we just mentioned. It's like you can think back from 91 to 2000 and those 10 College World Series, the 10 years, and then how many times they were in the College World Series and those national championships, and remembering somebody get a big hit. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool. I remember seeing that on TV. And so, and we want those guys to really be around and involved in what we're doing. You know, I want somebody of this generation of players, you know, to be talked about 10, 15, 20 years from now, the way those guys are around town. And they're great examples of that, and it's great to have them around the program.
Hi, Coach. Kaylee Rome with Tiger TV. You mentioned Trey Morgan. Obviously, he had a very impressive season last season. How have you seen him consistently develop over this fall?
Yeah, he had a small injury at the end of last season. We were very careful with bringing him back, and he's 100% healthy now and had a terrific fall. I think he has some very special talent, you know, in terms of hand-eye coordination, bat quickness, shortness of swing, where he can do some things as a hitter that not very many guys can. I mean, it's a little bit of a older school name, but you know, I think a lot about Tony Gwynn, you know, when I see Trey hit, and I think he's just scratching the surface. I mean, he's got some things that I think he can do to improve, which we're working on. But yeah, I'm sure glad he's on our team. That's for sure.
Recruiting wise, this is not a shot, but it's just when you look at the history of LSU baseball, when the commits that you're getting and the recruiting and the people that you're after, a lot of African American players, some Asian players, you know, some Latino players, it's going to be new to the LSU fan base because they haven't seen a lot of that here. Is that just a Jay Johnson recruiting philosophy of the best players, and this is maybe some of your West Coast just being there? You know, just kind of talk about that approach.
I think my approach is probably the same, or end goal, wants, needs is the same as everybody else. You know, to be playing baseball into June at a high level with talented, focused, mature, tough-minded, highly skilled players. And so there's a lot of boxes that you have to check to move your way into this ballpark and into that locker room. And so that's what I'm looking for.
I'm curious, was there a coach in your life that like left an impression on you and made you realize you wanted to coach? I know your dad was a coach, but is there like a story there that really was this defining moment that made you realize this is what you wanted to do for a career?
Yeah, I think I tried to be a business major for like 10 minutes and couldn't keep my head above water. And so that was, no, that definitely is true. But yeah, I think just growing up around it. I mean, my dad was a highly successful track and football coach, and just kind of being around him, it's like, hey, I want to be like him. And he was way ahead of his time, you know, relative to the ability to prepare. I always say I think he could have coached in the NFL if he wanted to. You know, lucky for me, he didn't, and was around all the time. And really, for me, it's like, who are the best at what do they do? And I want to take those things and bring them into what we're doing, you know. And it's exciting to be a part of this staff that we have here at LSU now, and getting to talk to Coach Wade about things, you know, or Coach Mulkey, you know, now, you know, Coach Brian Kelly. So, and there's plenty more than that. So I just try to do the best I can at who are the best and what do they do and what can we do to implement it to make us better.
How has he shaped your coaching philosophy or like your approach to coaching?
Yeah, I just say is really simple. You can't win unless you work, you know, period, end of story. And then respect, you know, treating people the right way, being honest, you know, being very straightforward. I'd say those are the three things that I took from him. All right, thank you guys.